people don't understand that abortion was not invented with second wave feminism. Like abortion was not invented when it became medicalized and when it became a legal debate. It's that women, when you say, and I have said on Twitter, women, you can't stop women from having abortions. Women have been ending pregnancies from the dawn of time. And then, some Daily Wire guy will be like, oh, well, murder has been happening since the beginning of time. And I understand that argument because I use that, with regard to people who say that prostitution is the oldest profession on earth. And I'm like, okay, well, that makes it okay. Like people do lots of horrible, unethical things and they've been doing those things forever. So that doesn't make it okay. But that's not really my point. Like, it doesn't matter if it's okay or not. It just doesn't matter. You just don't get a say. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. You can make abortion illegal all you want, but you can't stop women from ending pregnancies. You just can't. I'm sorry. Like, it's just not possible is what I mean. Like,
right.
You can try to throw women in jail for having miscarriages if that's what you want. That's what you're arguing, I suppose, if you actually want to make abortion illegal.
Well, we have examples of countries which have made abortion illegal, and we know the results are terrible and no one is happy with it, and the people eventually overturn that. People need to look at the Ceausescu regime in Romania that banned all abortion and most birth control. This was a godless communist regime that wanted to increase the population. It was not about respect for life or anybody's religion. It was
God's
forcing women to have babies, and all women their menstrual cycles were policed. They were followed around to make sure they'd have abortions. What happened? The orphanages were overflowing. Women were dying from illegal abortion. Women were sneaking into other countries, risking their lives, being shot at the border because it was the Iron Curtain. You couldn't leave the country you were in when you were in those communist states that controlled the movement of their citizens. Women would risk their lives trying to get to the neighboring countries to get an abortion. There were illegal, very unsafe abortionists. But what actually happened was women had a lot of kids that they didn't want, and they abandoned them in orphanages. And the Romanian orphan story is horrific. It's just those kids were just warehoused, and they all have attachment disorders. They're really terrible. So that's a communist regime that banned abortion, and it was horrible and no one liked it. And when Ceausescu was assassinated, this was the issue that people, and when he wasn't assassinated, he was publicly executed. People celebrated the return to legal abortion as one of the main reasons that they wanted their country to be free because of how awful it was. Then we have Ireland. I mean, we all know about the story of Savita Halappavanar, who was left to die because she was miscarrying a 17-week fetus and it still had a heartbeat, and they wouldn't intervene and end the pregnancy because abortion was illegal. And that has happened here in the United States, where women have gone into near death. I don't know if any women have actually died, but Catholic hospitals have done the same to women here. There's a great article on miscarriage management in Catholic hospitals in the American Journal of Public Health from about 10 years ago that is just horrific, where they're letting women bleed out because the baby has a heartbeat. It's just, this topic just enrages me. And I guess I'll pull it back in to just say the issue is whether or not women are full human beings who get to decide what to do with their bodies, or are we state-regulated incubators? I believe human life begins at fertilization, and I also believe you can't make a woman be an unwilling incubator for another person. And I don't know why the argument segues away from that basic reality of this.
Well, because people say, well, what about the child's rights? Like, it's not like, because I'll be like, it's her body. And as long as it's in her body and reliant on her body for survival, she gets to decide because it's her body. Until it can survive on its own outside her body, then it's still her body. And you can't, I support bodily autonomy no matter what. And I thought you did too.
Right.
But I think then people will reply to me and say, like, well, what about the child's rights?
Well, the child is
Like,
not
can you kill a
autonomous.
life? Are you allowed to kill a life? Because I don't know.
You can't make someone be a life support system for a child or any other human being. You can't do it. And it's, you know, to me, I have to separate from it and just be with whatever woman is making that decision for all of the thousands of reasons a woman might be ending a pregnancy. I can't insert my own morality into this situation. It's about her, but to me, it's like, you can't make her continue to risk her life and her health and her financial well-being and her mental wellness, um, to be an incubator when she doesn't want to.
No, it's draconian. I mean, I guess I want you to talk a little bit about how women. I mean, I don't know what term to use. I don't know if it would make sense to use the term abortion, but like, when I say like women have been ending pregnancies for all of humanity, for all of time. And I think sometimes it was called like restarting menses or something
Menstrual
like
regulation.
that. Menstrual
Right.
regulation. Like, wasn't that was just a form of natural birth control until relatively recently in terms of like
Right.
history?
Until like the late 1800s, abortion was birth control. Like that. I mean, I guess there were condoms available somewhat, but for the most part, um, abortion was the main way women were regulating their fertility and not having more children than they wanted to have, for a lot of reasons. Like there were no birth control devices. Women didn't have a choice whether or not they were having sex. And, like when
Mhm.
marital rape was legal through the 80s in the United States,
Mhm.
which again, like, I'm so tired of people not acknowledging recent history. And if a woman discovered that her period was late, there were many people in who offer menstrual regulation services to help her get her period back. It was considered like getting your period back. So ending a pregnancy was considered a fairly normal thing. And in English common law, they said that you can terminate a pregnancy through what's called quickening, which is when you start to feel, when you notice the baby moving. And that's around 20 weeks pregnant. That's halfway through the pregnancy. After that, it was considered a baby and you shouldn't do it. And honestly, for women's lives, you probably shouldn't be doing it at that point anyway. But all
Mhm.
over the world, women have known herbs and cervical stimulation techniques and other practices to get the body to release a pregnancy. There is a 6,000-year-old acupuncture text, Chinese medicine text, that talks about the abortion points and how to open the chong and get the woman to release a pregnancy. I know many women who've had successful acupuncture abortions. That's just one ancient tradition that's been doing this for at least
Mm.
6,000 years and the written record says at least 6,000 years.
Well,
So
and it's never been like an 8-month thing. Like, that's never been a common thing. This was the other thing that Megyn Kelly
yeah,
was. I don't want to target Megyn Kelly again because I like her, but like,
yeah,
this is something that conservatives will say all the time, like, oh well, these radicals, these Democrats, these like radical feminists, they're not using radical feminists in the same way we do, of course,
yeah.
but like, they want women to just be able to kill their baby up until 8 or 9 months, I think was what Trump said. Like, I'm like, 9 months, but that's not.
No,
Abortion has
it's
always been something that for the most part has happened very early in the pregnancy. Like, there's no
yeah.
rational woman in like a healthy situation who is gonna. I have a hard time even calling that an abortion at 8 months.
Most late abortions are when people have found out that there's a birth defect that's incompatible with life outside the womb, and they just want to get the process over with.
Yeah, yeah, right,
And
yeah.
that's just a shit situation. And
Mhm.
anybody who's going to judge a woman in that situation is a terrible person.
Yeah.
Like that is her choice to make in a terrible situation. And there are only like I think there are only three clinics in the whole country that will do those late abortions. And honestly, some of those abortions are happening because states have passed these 20-week abortion bans that say you can't induce labor in a pregnancy where the baby has a lethal birth defect. Like I've been at many births that would be considered late-term abortions where women wouldn't view what happened as an abortion. Like we found out the baby had a lethal birth defect. Often the mom's getting sick because babies with genetic problems, the placenta has genetic problems and the mom gets sick. Sick babies make sick moms. And so we're deciding to induce a baby that is, induce a pregnancy, like induce labor at 24 weeks and let the baby die in the mom's arms. And that is considered an abortion. And that is being banned all over the United States. And those women who find out that they have a pregnancy where the baby is not going to survive are now being forced to come to the state I live in and have an actual abortion, which is a much more traumatic and awful procedure because it's happening in an abortion clinic. And they have to kill the fetus before birth or else it's not legal. And this is being created by misogynists, insane right-wingers who don't understand the nuances of women's lives. Like those are considered abortions. Those states are also passing laws that you can't just let a baby die in the mom's arms. If there's a heartbeat, you have to do heroics. So these children who are not going to survive, no matter what's done, are being rushed to the NICU, put on ventilators, tortured, and then the parents have to decide when to pull the plug, and nobody, it's just horrific. It's a horrific situation rather than just letting a 20-week preemie die in the mother's arms. They're like, no, you have to do heroics, and because there's like a 1% chance the baby might survive, and they won't let parents make their own decisions in these horrific medical situations. So most of late-term abortion falls into that.
Yeah, I mean, I just even, even a lot of liberals will say things like, well, sure, it's fine for there to be abortions up to 6 weeks or something like that. And, exceptions for rape and incest. And if the life of the mother is in danger, and they're like, this is a reasonable position. And this is a position that everybody could agree on. And the right wingers who are saying that even that isn't okay are crazy. And it is crazy. But I don't think that's a reasonable or a moderate position. I think it's still no matter what, I'm like, you don't get a say at all. You actually don't get to have an opinion on what any woman does with their body. You don't get to vote on it. You don't get to have a debate with her about it. It's none of your freaking business. Sorry. And you don't sound moderate to me. You don't sound liberal to me at all. You sound like you don't understand how women's bodies work, and you don't understand the realities of women's lives. I mean, there's plenty of other reasons that a woman would want to have an abortion, and whether or not she's whether or not she's behaving like all these Twitter knobs are, where it's like, it's just a bunch of slutty women who just want to have abortions willy-nilly. I don't know women like that, but I don't know most of the women, it's not a desirable thing to have an abortion, but even if it were, it's still none of my business. But if you're in a relationship with an abusive man, no, you don't want to have a baby with him, because then this kid is going to have an abusive father for their whole life. They're going to be screwed up, and you're going to have to be attached to this man and be abused for the rest of your life. Is that the right thing to do?
He's going to torture you through the court system. He, the child is going to have all sorts of problems because they're born on a battlefield. They're going to be in and out of courts. They're going to, just be fought over like a box of books. Right. A lot of women wake up to the fact they need to get out of an abusive relationship when a pregnancy happens. And I feel like, my woo-woo things, I feel like there is a spirit to every pregnancy, and I don't think every spirit wants to be incarnated. This is revert to my Catholic background, this valley of tears, this world of suffering. Not every pregnancy wants to come here. And I think there's a spiritual argument that could be made that sometimes that pregnancy is there to get that woman out of that relationship, to wake her up to the fact she's with somebody who would likely kill her or a child, or at least torture her.
Totally. Well, because abusive men do they'll start the abuse while the woman's pregnant. Right. Or at least they'll start to exhibit, how controlling they are by being like, oh, you can't do this and you shouldn't eat that because the baby. And
Right.
or
And
that kind of
the
thing, right?
abuse ramps up during pregnancy almost universally. And the most dangerous time, the time women are most likely to be killed by an abuser is when they leave. The second most likely is postpartum. That is when men kill women. And I've seen that in my own community. It happens. It happens pretty frequently. So then these conservatives, often like the more moderate conservatives, are like, well, even in Europe, you can't get an abortion past 16 weeks. The laws say after 16 weeks. And that may be true for abortion on demand for maternal choice reasons, but you can get a medically indicated abortion after 16 weeks in every country where abortion
Was
is
I saying
legal.
6 weeks when I meant 16 weeks earlier? Sorry to
Well,
interrupt.
6 weeks is what they're passing, these 6-week bans, which are basically a total ban on
Okay.
abortion.
That is what I meant to
That's
say.
that's what's happening in like Texas is passing these 6 weeks ban. Texas has a 6-week ban that also says you have to do an ultrasound to confirm pregnancy, but you can't see a pregnancy usually until 6 weeks. So if you can confirm a pregnancy by ultrasound, it's too late to do the abortion. So 6-week bans are happening, which are basically total bans on abortion. And then in like most of Europe, 16 weeks is the cutoff for abortion on demand, like abortion just because a woman needs to not be pregnant by her own decision making. But those countries will still let you have an abortion if you found out your baby doesn't have a brain. They will still let you end a pregnancy if you found out your baby doesn't have any kidneys. They will still let you have an abortion if the pregnancy is making you very sick. It's not, and you don't have to go in front of a panel of priests or judges to do it. It's considered a medical necessity of a procedure after that. And most of the late term abortions would still be legal in those countries because there's so few of them to begin with. And almost all of them are in cases of lethal birth defects or the mother's life is endangered.
Right. I mean, so, and there's very, very, very few people who actually believe that abortion should be illegal in all circumstances. So I was reading that the latest Gallup poll says 52% of Americans describe themselves as pro-choice, while 44% identified as pro-life. 34% said abortion should be legal under any circumstances, which I think is great. I was surprised by that, actually.
That's a third of people, yeah.
Yeah, compared to 13% who said it should be illegal in all circumstances. And a majority, 51%, said abortion should be legal only under certain circumstances. A view that encompasses a wide range of policies, but I think that essentially matches what Trump is arguing. I don't think he was specific about what he wanted, right? He was just saying it should go back to the states, and then he was kind of vague about like not opposing abortion, but also trying not to be considered too liberal on abortion.
He's astute about cultural trends. He sees that this is a losing issue for Republicans. People don't want abortion to be fully criminalized, and we're seeing that.
I think it's so dumb. Like, they are going to get screwed if they take this position. Like, there's obviously sorry to interrupt. There's just such a small number of people who think that there should be a full ban on abortion. And I feel like the Republicans are winning over a lot of people because the Democrats are so crazy on so many issues, including the trans thing, including on immigration, and including the fact that they have a walking skin bag as president. But they are losing women on abortion,
and some men as well. Like, this is the issue the Republicans are crazy on, of just this complete inability to budge on it. And I wish we could return back to the days where politicians could say, I'm personally opposed to abortion, but I think it's a moral issue and it shouldn't be criminalized. But everyone's so black and white on it now. But in very conservative states that vote Republican in presidential election and congressional elections have had referendums trying to criminalize all abortion in the last couple of years, and the abortion rights people have won. So Ohio just codified the right to abortion. Kansas shut down an abortion ban with a referendum. So when it's put to the people of the state and they come out and vote in the privacy of the voting booth, most people don't want to criminalize abortion. And I think even the men, men understand that. Men understand men. They understand rape happens. A lot of conservative men do not want to be forced to raise a rapist child.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, I do get frustrated because I feel like a lot of men with opinions on abortion don't really understand, and they don't really understand how women's bodies work and so on and so forth. But
and on the other side, I get frustrated with the left, where a lot of men are supportive, have told me to my face they're supportive of abortion because they want women to have sex with them without they want women to be more sexually available.
Yeah, and they don't want to have to be responsible, right? Like they don't want to have to think about any repercussions. They want to, I mean, this is a whole other topic, but this is the, a main problem with the like two consenting adults mantra, which is that, men don't have to think about how they impact women when they have sex with those women, even if the woman wants to, even if she consents. I'm not talking about rape, but it's like you can throw every single other ethic and moral out the window because like she wanted to, and it's like, no, you can't. First of all, men and women are different. Women can get pregnant. There's lifelong repercussions for women. Second of all, women catch feelings more easily than men do. We're biologically built to bond with men that we have sex with, and you can't just have casual sex with us and pretend like that's fine, that you aren't responsible towards her and how she feels. And I know that's like, I think that's like would be quite considered radical thing to say nowadays, to be like, no, you shouldn't. Like, I don't think that you should have sex with a woman that you don't want to date or be in a relationship with. I'm saying that after, like a lifetime of, I've been in lots of relationships. I've had casual sex too. And it's not being all bad. I'm not like horrified and I don't feel traumatic by having had casual sex, but also, I'm at a point in my life where it's like, I'm not having sex with somebody that I wouldn't want to be in a relationship with. And I think men should think about things that way as well, despite the fact that their dicks don't think that way. Like you have to understand that you operate differently than most women do. Like I think it's easier for men to have casual sex. I think it's a lot easier for men to have casual sex than women and not feel anything about it and there not be any repercussions. And that doesn't mean you should do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sure that those kinds of men, those kinds of really liberal, like adults should be able to do whatever they want to do because that suits them. And it doesn't mean that they have to be responsible. If she gets pregnant, she can and should have an abortion. Or I should just assume, like I've heard men say like, oh, well, I just assumed she was on the pill. It was like, why on earth would you have sex with a woman and assume she was on the pill? Like you should assume that a woman's not on the pill because the pill is awful and no woman should be on the pill. But I mean, at very least, you should ask. At very least, you should just pull out just in case. At very least, you should maybe have the conversation with somebody that you're having sex with. What happens if we get pregnant?
I'm like, well, she lied and said she was on the pill. I'm like, okay, here's the deal. Like, we can't inseminate ourselves. And this is the other issue of the abortion conversation is men should not be ejaculating in women that they don't want to have a baby with. Period.
No, never. Not. There's no excuse. Why would you ejaculate in a woman if you didn't want to make her pregnant?
Right.
That stupid idiot.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Wear a condom or pull out, and this,
or be with a woman that you want to parent with, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's such a weird time to be like at this point in the human story where, okay, we needed to like experiment and see how many of those, we had to break all those rules. And now it's like, okay, now I understand why that rule was put in place. Now I understand why that rule was put in place. But these, cultural mores and norms were put here to protect people. They're not entirely oppressive, as I believed as a young feminist, that it was all just about women being chattel. It's like, no, there's a benefit to your health and to all of society, and certainly to your future children, to not have sex with people unless you want to have a child with them. And then certainly if you are having sex and you don't want to be having children, you should be using multiple levels of avoiding that. Yeah. And we don't live in a perfect world, so that's not happening, which is why abortion needs to stay legal. And even if all of that were happening, women can still end up in situations where they get diagnosed with cancer when they're pregnant, or their husband goes insane, or whatever happens, and they can't stay pregnant. So abortion will always be necessary, no matter, even when people are only having sex in loving, committed relationships, it still remains a necessary part of human life.
Even when people are only having sex in committed marriages and trying to start a family.
Yes.
Just like we always have been, just like the olden days.
Just like the olden days. Like, it's just, the world is messy and complicated, and yeah.
And I mean, people also, like, I don't know, there's so many weird aspects to this conversation, because people then act like it should be the woman's entire responsibility and she should be keeping her legs closed then, and she shouldn't be whoring around unless she wants to have a baby, and if she gets pregnant, that's her problem, as though like women, and men don't have to be responsible for that because they're men, and they have these crazy sex drives, as though like women don't have sex drives too. It's like women have casual sex with men because they're attracted to those men and turned on and they want to have sex. Like, we also enjoy sex and have sex drives, and humans are like, it's hard. It's it's hard on, like, I'm saying on one hand, like, you should try to be thoughtful about who you're having sex with and under what circumstances, but people are always, especially like young people who are less savvy about the choices they're making, gonna be driven by desires and lust and things like that. And
well, and then we get into the whole other layer of a lot of women, and I'm not talking about women who are being prostituted, I'm talking about just regular women, are having transactional sex with men because of the world that we live in. It's like, I need a place to live and I can't afford rent by myself, so I'm going to have sex with this guy and we'll live together. Like, there's a lot of that going on too, where it's, it's not, I wouldn't call it a prostitution situation, but I would call it transactional sex is happening. And that's just a reality of a lot of women's lives.
And women are compartmentalizing, and women seeking sugar daddies who will pay for stuff and take them on trips. And, all they have to do is have sex with these guys and not really think about it. I bet there's some argument to be made about the pill contributing to that, because you can, like, maybe you don't have a libido anyway, so you may as well just have sex with this old guy you're not attracted to if you're attracted to nobody, which is exactly a side effect of the pill, right?
Totally. And you're on Prozac, so you can't have an orgasm. So you have no
and you're
sex
on Prozac, so you don't have any feelings anyway. All of your feelings are shut down. So sure, you can just think about nothing like you do for the rest of the day while you're having sex with somebody that you're actually disgusted by, and at least you'll get a purse and like a trip to Cabo or whatever.
Yeah, what a time we live in. So I don't know. I think it's interesting watching us get played by the culture wars and seeing the pool now between I know so many people in my personal life who are so angry at the Democrats that they are seriously voting Republican now because of the lockdown tyranny, because of the forced vaccinations, and very much because of the transgender issue. And then you have the issue of abortion thrown into that mix. Like, we just get played. Like, you can't, there's crazy on every side. So I'm wondering how it's going to play out. I do think overturning Roe versus Wade is the only reason why we didn't have a red wave in 2022. I think that the Republicans would have won so majorly if they had not overturned abortion rights, because I think, like Batya Unger says, that working class people want abortion to be legal, whether or not they personally approve of a decision to get an abortion.
If you're poor and you can't afford to have another kid, and you're like, if we have another kid, we're not going to be able to feed the kid or pay our rent, then that's rough, right? Like, women in the States don't even get maternity leave.
And women who declare themselves
They
pro-life
barely do anyway.
are honestly just as likely to end up having an abortion as women who declare themselves pro-choice. Like when
Right.
you are in that situation, it is completely different than whenever you're hypothesizing about that situation.
Yeah. I mean, in Canada, you know, Pierre Poilievre is probably going to win the next federal election. He's a conservative, and there's no real abortion debate in Canada. So, I mean, it's like everybody is so angry at Trudeau and the NDP for what they did during COVID in particular, and I think people are angry about the trans issue as well, and you know the drug problem and the homelessness problem. Like there's a lot of sort of similar issues in Canada that we're seeing in the U.S. that are leading people to move right. We just don't have such an extreme right. I did want to ask you, like, do you think that overturning Roe was really such a big deal?
I think Roe was a very flawed decision. I really think they should have argued that the right to abortion is included in the 14th Amendment and in the I think they should have argued it differently rather than make up the right to privacy. I think that the whole languaging of Roe was unfortunate. It was all about protecting doctors and their right to perform abortions. It really wasn't about women having a right. The whole thing is women and her doctor, or physicians have a right to do this. I wasn't a huge fan of Roe v. Wade, but I think overturning Roe v. Wade has created so much suffering. And I see it because I live in New Mexico, which is a state with really liberal abortion laws. And we're probably the only state in the country that is overserved in abortion services. Like we have more than the women of our individual state would need. And we are having women flocking here from Texas, Oklahoma, from other states. And I think it's awful. I think it's terrible that women in Texas have to travel, 500 miles to get an abortion. So I think it was a big deal. But Roe was a flawed decision to begin with, not for the reasons the right says it was, but from a feminist perspective, from a perspective of someone who loves women. I think they should have just declared a right to bodily autonomy,
Yeah.
period. Yeah, instead of the way it was written, like, up to the states, up to this many weeks, then the states can regulate after this. And just a very weird decision to begin with.
I'm just so offended at the idea that other people should be able to vote on what a woman does with their body.
Yes,
It's nothing to do with you.
No. And it's just so dehumanizing to women. You can't force women to complete pregnancies. Pregnancy is a threat to your health, your life. I say this as a midwife where I love birth. I think freely chosen birth is like the most amazing experience a human being can have. It's just, it's incredible. But to force a woman to do it is torture, literally. And it could kill her. It literally could kill her. It certainly can leave her with lifelong disabilities. And who will take care of that baby she doesn't want? It's going to create trauma to the infant to force a woman to have a child she doesn't want. She will either be raising a child that she's resentful of, or she'll place the baby for adoption, which always creates trauma. And I just can't even believe that we're having this discussion. It's so dehumanizing to women and to babies.
Yeah.